Hello and welcome to the CBB Supershow, brought to you by the FTN Network. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85, and we are officially into the Elite Eight. Very bittersweet, as we have just count them 6 slates left until the college basketball season is officially over. Of course, a 2-game slate tomorrow, 2-game slate Sunday. We have the 2-game NIT Final Four slate on Tuesday. Showdown NIT slate on Thursday. Saturday, of course, brings with it next Saturday the Final Four slate, and then championship game on Monday. Very bittersweet, but it's been a great season. It's been very fun, and it's been honestly our best year yet, with not only like winning for everybody in our community, but just overall our content has grown, our community has grown. It's been a really, really fun season, and I'm going to miss it for sure. But we're still going to be doing our thing all summer long. We're going to be talking about transfers. We're going to be having some coaches on. Like, there's a lot of fun stuff planned. So fear not. Fear not. Before we get started, I want to invite everybody to please smash that like button. It helps so much. The engagements, the impressions. You guys saw today I released a Jamal Shed short. We're starting to do short form content there. So all of that continued engagements you guys give us and that support really does help. I appreciate it so much. We're going to the moon, guys. We're in the next stratosphere, so I'm very excited about the direction that we are going. What we do here, just in case you are new, welcome. We cover college basketball from a DFS perspective. We also talk about prize picks, prop betting, and any other betting opportunities that there are. Tried and true method, breaking down each game by game analysis. Now, this is going to be a 2-game slate breakdown, so it'll be a shorter show than maybe we're accustomed to, but promise you we'll fill you up with lots of good information, and we will be competitive here even on a 2-game slate. Veterans, grab your seat, grab your coffee, your donut. Let's do this. But before we do that even, let's kind of rehash what we just saw here on this final day of the Sweet 16. Truly crazy as expected. First 2 rounds, there were some upsets, no Cinderella story per se, no real buzzer beaters. People were saying, man, the tournament, it's so chalky. But you had to know, like, there was going to be some fireworks here in this Sweet 16, and there absolutely was. NC State just guts out a really strong win against Marquette. From start to finish, Marquette shot horribly. That's the thing, man. Any given Sunday, as they say in the NFL, but truly in anybody can beat anybody in the 1-game season format. And all it takes is a bad shooting night. We saw Utah State. They were completely overmatched by Edey, but they shot poorly, right? And at least they could have shot somewhat decent. They would have been in that game. Saw that happen tonight with Marquette. Just brick after brick. Tyler Kolek tried to hard carry as much as he can, but he got absolutely no support from his team. NC State, Mo Diarra, best player on the planet right now? I think so. NC State wins 67-58. They advance. Great story. They're still alive, winning the 5 games in 5 nights. Now they're into the Elite Eight. And you know what? We're going to have to be continuing to cheer them on, because they're going to be facing not Houston, unfortunately. They're going to be facing Duke. And if you're a Duke fan, I apologize. You're not going to like this portion of the show right now, but I can't stand Duke. There is one team, well, I shouldn't say one team only, but there's one team when it comes to basketball that I despise the most, and that is definitely Duke Blue Devils. Growing up, I was a big Tar Heels fan. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Washington Huskies. I'm not a fair weather fan. I support them. They had some rough years. And really in the 90s, if you grew up in that era like I did, it was really like, regardless of where you lived, you cheered for Duke or you cheered for North Carolina. Both programs had ridiculous talent every single season. They were up near the top of the college basketball world. And I kind of just aligned myself with the Tar Heels there. So not a big Duke fan. They get kind of gifted one here. Say what you will, but beating, a Houston team that didn't have their emotional leader, their veteran, their point guard for a half, and they still struggled. They won 54-51, but Houston, offensively, there's just nothing there. The catalyst, you take Jamal Shead out of there. JoJo Tugler, who's the heir apparent there in the front court, being hurt earlier in the season, like this, those injuries piled up, and that was just a gut punch there. That Shead injury really took the win from my sales, and I know most others. Ended up cashing, some things in DFS tonight, which was great, but had Shead made it an entire game and not gotten injured, I can't help but wonder what tonight could have brought for a lot of us. But it was nice to see some profitability there anyways. The most painful thing was Shead being one of the final legs of a big parlay that would have paid out, but that's the game. Regardless of how it affected me, that's very unimportant, minuscule in the grand scheme of things. I really have a heartache and real legitimate pain knowing that Jamal Shead's collegiate career is potentially over now. Houston season is over. Like, they just didn't deserve to have it end that way, especially after that, arguably one of the best games of the tournament in the second round, that overtime win over Texas A&M. The way that Houston was playing Duke early and the way that Shead, it was a slow start for them for sure. But right before that, Shead had just gotten a steal, an easy fast break bucket, had grabbed back-to-back rebounds, and he was pushing another fast break play. Like, he was keeping Duke on their heels, not letting them get settled. And Houston, they play methodically, they play physically, right? They're not known as a super fast-paced team, but they were definitely going to push Duke back onto their heels. Unfortunate injury that just it seemed very unlikely that they would be able to overcome that. LJ Cryer, he's not he can handle the rock, right? But just no depth for Houston, just really betrayed them. So NC State versus Duke. Of course, NC State knocked out Duke early in the ACC tournament when they started their run. Would love to see the Wolfpack win that one. Duke didn't shed their soft label. And I know a lot of people said, well, they got to beat Houston to shed that soft label. Yes, they beat Houston, but they didn't shed that label. Had Shead been around, that physicality from Roberts, like to me, they're still soft, and they're going to be going up against an NC State team that they know very well. But Mo Diarra is a monster, and I think he's going to be a real problem for Kyle Wodakowski. So I'm really excited for that matchup, and I'm going to be cheering for the Wolfpack. And I'm going to have to be getting some Wolfpack gear to hang behind me here. What's the deal, man? I need Alex to hook me up. Purdue beats Gonzaga. Gonzaga shot better than Utah State. Fouls happened galore, especially on Ben Gregg. Purdue just wore them down. It wasn't even the best game for Edey, although his second half was solid. Braden Smith had a magnificent game, dropped to 50. Lance Jones hit some big shots. He was really solid in the first half. A lot of those secondary Purdue pieces did very little in the second half, but Smith and Edey hard carried there, and they just outlasted Gonzaga. And they did a nice job. I got to give it to Painter. Ryan Nembhard was amazing in the first half, and they did a really nice job kind of negating what he had done, and ended up winning that one 80-68. And the Vols, they get a little bit closer. They're getting close to that first Final Four. Rick Barnes' last Final Four was 2003, back when he was coaching Texas Longhorns, and he had a point guard by the name of TJ Ford in those days. One step closer, a really solid 82-75 win over Creighton. That second half start where what was it? Vols jumped out 18-0. Like, that was a really, really huge, start in the second half. Zakai Zeigler was making shots. You guys saw that was a small sample. He didn't even have his best game. Like, that wasn't Zakai Zeigler's best game. He's just warming up. He's tuning up the band. Sweet Chin Music, Shawn Michaels. He's just warming up, saving the best here for Purdue. Jonas Idu had a bad game. Going to have to get him back on track there. The thing about Zach Edey, obviously, he draws fouls galore. Tennessee has a myriad of big men that they can go. If Idu gets into foul trouble, they're not dead. They got Toba Waka, got a couple of other guys that they can use. They have bodies that they can throw there at him, and their physicality, I think, is going to make Braden Smith very uncomfortable. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. I lost some Final Four teams early in my bracket, but two of these Elite Eight matches I did have picked: Purdue versus Tennessee and UConn versus Illinois. So we'll see how that shakes out. I'm still angling for the Tennessee versus UConn title game, but I think Ricky Barnes, man, they're so very close. Can they do it against this Purdue team? both teams somewhat deep. Obviously, Santiago Vescovi, he didn't play because of sickness. We'll see if he's able to come back and play on Sunday. They're certainly going to need him, but good on the Vols. I'm glad we got them for at least one more game. I wasn't ready for them to drop out just yet. So that was the Sweet 16. We're into the Elite Eight. I see the chat is popping. Let's see. Let's see what we got going on here. There's my man, Alex. Don't want it to ever end. Yeah, I know. This is crazy, dude. This is like this run by the Wolfpack, man. Like people say history has a tendency to repeat itself, and we're definitely in that territory here with the Wolfpack repeating, that title run, a few years back. Doing some math, or I can't remember what it was. It's something yesterday I posted in the Discord, and I was like, guys, was this year? And it was like 80 something. Is that 40 years ago? And it like, yeah, I'm almost 40. I guess it was. Like, it's just such a weird thing to think, because it doesn't feel like the 90s and the 80s was that long ago, but I guess it is. Math. Johnny's now relying heavily on Duke because of his futures. That's an unfortunate scenario there. Don't like to hear that, but got to win that money. Tony, bummer, Shed got hurt. Yeah, man, if he didn't get hurt, like, big night for most of FTN, because we had a lot of ownership there on him. A lot of people still cash. I was still very happy with that. Ziegler at like 5%, Connect at was he 19%, something like that. But really, like, Houston was going to beat Duke by a good 7 or 8 points there with Shed. And I don't think it would have been particularly close. Like, it would have been a close win, but I don't think they would ever have to really be concerned. I think they would have kept a 3-possession lead throughout. And you saw when Shed went down, though, they have a 6-7 point lead. Instantly evaporated. Just really, really unfortunate situation there for this Houston team. I think Shed was I don't know that he has a COVID year. He started in 2021, so I don't think he actually has another year available. But geez, I don't know. Who even knows with the way that the extra year is going right now. Yep. It's definitely, part of the game. The injuries are part of the game, but and I really wasn't ready for their season to end. I would have liked to have seen Houston take on NC State. I think that would have been a fun matchup. But as it stands now, like, it's just really disappointing. I'm not even like a huge Houston. Like, I like Houston. I respect Houston. I definitely do. But it's not as if like I'm some sort of Houston super fan or anything, but that injury really gutted me. A lot of that had to do with the fact that, yes, I had a really massive potential to make a sizable amount off of parlays today. That hurt, but more so just like a hurt for Jamal Shed. And I just did a video earlier this morning on him that we released on our YouTube channel on YouTube Shorts. And like, Shed's a player that I just, I really like. I really enjoy watching him play. So hate seeing any kind of career end on an injury. And what I mean by that is not that he'll never play again, just that he's probably done at the collegiate level. And now he's going to have to fight his way for a professional spot, of course. Player props, yes. I will have player props. There's Connecticut on the slate. My man Cam Spencer. We're going right back to Cam Spencer. Have no fear. We'll be talking about that here shortly. I don't know that he does. I don't think he was a freshman in 2020, so I don't know if that works for him. But yeah, that would be cool if he was able to come back. He's been through four Sweet 16s, man. He's an absolute stud. Modi, yeah, dude. If you don't, I'm gonna get one because that's my guy. I mean, geez, Mo Diarra, like, we pride ourselves on being early on players all the time, and it it sometimes can be hit or miss. But we were definitely on Mo Diarra before the masses, and man, he's just so good. God, he's so good at rebounding. Like, the overall NC State numbers, like, a lot of people reference, like, oh, they're not a great rebounding team. It's like, okay, sure. Overall total season numbers say that, but if you chop off the last 2 months of the season, sit here and try to tell me they're not a very good rebounding team and continue to watch Mo Diarra pull down rebounds like he's freaking Dennis Rodman or something, right? Like, dude is just so good. DJ Burns had a horrible game, and people are like, oh no, what are they going to do? Like, hello, Mo Diarra, learn his name. This guy is legitimate, and he can shoot threes. Like, I think Mo might end up being what I wanted Mifiondo Kabengele to be from Florida State a couple of years ago. Like, I really loved Kabengele coming out, could hit threes. Got a promise for the first round. If he would have come back for one more collegiate season, oh my God, he would have been legendary, but he didn't. Now we're in that same position with Mo Diarra, and I think he will come back and we'll get that. But I think once he enters the NBA, he'll last if he does. And he just like looking at it, that's Mifiondo Kabengele, what I wanted him to be. So I'm latching on to Mo Diarra for sure. That's my guy. Mattress Mac. What about what's his name? I don't follow all the like DFS and sports betting like personalities on Twitter and all the drama. So there's a lot of stuff like I just don't know because I'm involved in my own thing with you guys. But I saw what's it, betting with Trent, that account, and man, he just got racked. He lost every single matchup today, and then people were hitting him with pictures in his replies with tickets picking opposite of what he picked, and they were thanking him for the 4-0. Like, oof, that had to hurt, man. That, like, you almost feel like, and he posted a picture of himself like, hella like, I don't know if he's just leaning into that as a troll or what, but man, some of these accounts on here are truly scary if those are not troll accounts. Before we get started, also, I keep saying that, the news, man, people are being like, it's a tournament, so we don't have to worry about the news. Just want to harp on the fact that the news, regardless of it, the tournament or not, being in our FTN community Discord is a huge leg up on the field. Like Santiago Vescovi, there was people saying he was out, and then the starting lineups came out to hand it out to all the media personalities, and he was starting. I just feel like those were probably made earlier in the day, so they didn't change it. Then it came out, obviously he wasn't warming up, he wasn't playing, so we got that. But there was conflicting reports there. That was something that you had, if you couldn't check yourself, then you had the Discord to look it up there. So that was one that was kind of stressful there, right? And then Gainey and Meshack and stuff. And those guys did end up getting some ownership because that news ultimately ended up coming out early enough that you could figure it out. But there was several, things that have been popping up lately. Latrell Wrightsell yesterday, like, there's people either just saying, whatever they want, trying to be right, even though they have no actual source on the matter, or there's just people, that truly don't foresee this being a big problem, and they just going to throw out news there hoping to get some attention. So I want to encourage people to really pay attention to what is being posted there and by who. You can't trust blue checks anymore, because obviously you can buy a blue check even if you have like one follower. So you can't trust that. You just have to make sure it's an actual sourced account. And ultimately that Creighton account from earlier ended up being right about Vescovi. But that was one of those situations where it's like, okay, I need to see maybe one or two other sources that I trust before I go in here. But we'll make you aware of it so you can plan ahead there just in case. All right. Transfer portal is absolutely popping. I saw this. What is another thing I want to talk about? So shot quality, just to kind of give you a heads up there. Saw this from a guy. Per shot quality, Marquette should have cruised tonight and won by double digits. Says the power of March makes the most extraordinary ballers look painfully ordinary. Whatever. But this, the score ends up being 67-58. Per shot quality, their score was 79-64. Marquette got a ton of good looks, a lot of open looks, but they missed 25 plus triples, 9 of which by my count were wide open, meaning there was nobody within a couple of feet from them, and they still bricked those shots. Sometimes you just have a bad game. That's where it comes into play that anybody can beat anybody in a one-game season. So picked a bad time to have a bad shooting night, but we're happy with the Wolfpack. So Yeah, but I don't believe he was. Let me here now. I got to double check because now you're making me second guess myself. I think he was a freshman in 2021. Anyone that played during the COVID year, yes, they get the COVID year. You're right. But he was a freshman in 21-22, so I don't know that that applies to him. But I'm sure if it does, it'll come out and we'll see. But I'm pretty sure that's not the case for him. I would like him to come back and play, though, if they could find a way. I guess we'll see. All right, let's get in this 2-game slate here. Illinois versus UConn, Clemson versus Alabama. First game, we're going to talk about the Illini versus the UConn Huskies. Now, the Huskies come into this one as a 9-point favorite, total of 155.5. So both games on this slate actually have fairly high totals. But we learned a lesson yesterday that most of us, or a lot of us, already knew. You can't always just go straight to that highest total game and be like, I'm going to stack it, because there was mention that one of the optimals in single entry had very little North Carolina and Alabama on it. So we're in a 2-game territory here, so we can't get too fancy. But that is something to kind of consider there if you're building your stacks or leaning heavily towards one team. Now, UConn is a 9-point favorite against the Illini. I definitely like that. Illinois played outrageously well on the defensive side of the ball against Iowa State, which is something that I just didn't expect. They hadn't played defense like that all season long, and they really clamped down. Obviously, UConn is a much different animal than what Iowa State is. Defensively, they're pretty similar, but offensively, UConn has a lot more weapons. They're much more consistent. They are with their depth, they're a lot more dangerous with that. Like guys coming off the bench for Iowa State. I know Curtis Jones had a decent game, but they're just not guys that you fear. Off of UConn's bench and secondary players like Hassan Diarra, you saw it in their last game. That dude's a killer. He could be starting on a lot of other programs. So I think this game plays out in a similar fashion to the last 2 UConn games. Like the first half, we'll see their opponent kind of keep it close, maybe even the Illini run with a lead for a bit. So we're going to look for live opportunities. I don't think they'll give it, but if you get any live opportunities where UConn's like, plus money, which probably won't happen, or, maybe like a couple of points, like we want to slam those opportunities. Because what's going to happen is in the second half, there'll be adjustments made. If Terry Shannon comes out hot, or maybe Marcus Domask is just, doing his thing, they'll come back in the second half, and Hurley, who's just an amazing coach, will have adjusted just like they did against Jadon Lede, just like they did against, Boo Buie. And they are going to completely take them out of their rhythm. And if Shannon's the one killing them, they're just going to make sure that he's less of a factor in the second half. And that's easier said than done. But we're talking about a just otherworldly UConn team right now that I just don't think anyone in this tournament can beat. I think Illini's defense, it was great effort against Iowa State, but I would be very surprised if they had that sort of effort defensively again. And UConn just won't get rattled. Iowa State, they got rattled. Lipsy missing shots, Gilbert missing shots, foul trouble galore. Like there was just, a lot of panic ensuing instantly for the Cyclones when they shell shocked when Shannon hits a 3, then another 3. And all of a sudden Illinois is up by 11 and Iowa State's, what's going on here? This wasn't supposed to happen. UConn can withstand those kind of runs, especially early. So I think UConn does cover this 9 for what it's worth. I do think the total goes over 155.5 as well. Now there's going to be a lot of guys projecting well on this slate. It's probably going to, for a 2-gamer, it should probably be pretty highly owned. A lot of guys are projecting well over 4 to 4.5x because the pricing is uber soft once again. On the UConn side, I'm going right back to my man, Cam Spencer. That was one we can pat ourselves on the back for, sub 15% ownership. Again, San Diego State priced at 6.9. Like we had seen a Newton game. We saw a Klingon game. We just hadn't seen that Spencer game in the tournament yet. And he really delivered. Nice thing about Cam Spencer in close games like this, or Killicam, if you will, as his coach calls him, he's going to play a ton of minutes. Like we're going to see him, if it stays competitive throughout, he's going to play 36, 37 minutes. Like he's just barely going to leave the floor. Very efficient scorer, elite 3-point shooter, contributes across the board in peripherals, and he has been racking up the steals lately, which is even better. only priced 100 more at 7K. I still think, even though he played so well against SDSU yesterday, that people are going to ignore him for the most part. I think we're going to see just that natural, hey, Alabama, they're fast paced. Hey, that's a high total. I've got to get 7 from that game. So we're going to see that Bama Clemson ownership just super high, which is going to once again give us the opportunity for a lower ownership share on UConn. Now it's a 2-game slate, so we're probably not going to get like today with Ziegler, we got him at 5%. We're not going to get anyone at that percentage here that's relevant, at least on a 2-gamer, but it'll be the difference between 60% ownership on a PJ Hall, who's stupid cheap this time, and maybe 25-ish% for Spencer, Castle, those type of guys. So Cam Spencer is, again, one of my top plays, going right back to him. And we'll just go ahead and dub him the posh play and just kind of dare people to play him, I guess. Caravan's price is really cheap, going kind of right back to him as well at 5.9K. He had a really strong first half against the Aztecs, disappeared in the second half, but he shot 3 of 11. Still has a nice floor of 20-ish fantasy points sitting there at 5.9. So good bet of him as being a stack opportunity. Like, I want this mini stack of UConn. Seemingly every UConn slate for the last month that we've mentioned, like, dang, we should just stack UConn. And if we didn't, we'd look back on that game and be like, Jesus, the UConn stack, that was the move. It's like, how many times are you going to sit here and continue to say that but not do anything about it? And I had 2 UConn yesterday, and I was kicking myself like, why didn't I just play 4? So if you're running multiple lineups, you're going to want a 4-man UConn stack. And the prices are really cheap. Stephen Castle, after a double-double, he's priced at 5.7. Makes no sense. Hassan Diarra is very cheap at 4.3. He plays about 20 minutes. That's what he's going to get no matter what. But you saw he really filled it up against SDSU, and he was very confident, and he was rebounding quite well. And this Illinois defense could certainly surrender a never game like this to Diarra. So he is definitely one of the value plays that I want to use in my UConn stacks, or even on his own. If I'm only playing one UConn player in a lineup, I think Diarra is just fine. Hail Mary on Jalen Stewart. I think he's practically, Hurley's basically begging him not to hit the transfer portal in the middle of a tournament run, which is the times we live in. Obviously, Spencer's done after this season. Newton's not going to come back, be highly unlikely. There's going to be holes. They're going to recruit. They're going to get guys in transfer portal. But Jalen Stewart is primed, set, and ready to be the star of this team next year. So Hurley's been really trying to get him some minutes as well, but I don't know that he can play more than 7 to 10. But he is a interesting super GPP look at 3-3 if you're really trying to stack top options. Newton at 8.4, really affordable. Klingon at 8.1, very affordable as well. They'll have to use some Dane Danger again on the Illinois side to deal with that Klingon size. I do have some concerns about him in this spot. He's going to play 26, 27 minutes. The foul issue is always going to be there. I think he has a huge upside for GPPs here, but I just don't trust him enough for my main build. I'm going to continue to take those discounts on Spencer, Caravan, and Castle right now and use guys like Newton and Klingon more in the GPP look. Although this could easily turn into a Newton versus Shannon type of battle. On the Illini side, you have a still expensive Terry Shannon at 9.1. He's essentially matchup proof. You look at his last 5 games, he's been over 40 fantasy points with ease, and he scored 26 plus real points in each of those games. He has just been phenomenal. Iowa State doing what he did against them proves to us that he is matchup proof. We're officially into the short slates, 2 gamers, to where we don't have the luxury. If this would have been a Virginia game, we just wouldn't have the luxury to fade it. We've got to play somebody from it regardless. And I don't think the Illinois side is particularly strong here in this spot, but there are some guys that we consider. Obviously, Scary Terry, if you want to go there, he's more of a GPP look to me. You have some values with guys like Luke Goody, who's playing about 15 to 20 minutes. He's priced down there at 4K. Quincy Guerrier is down about 4.8, which makes him somewhat intriguing. And then you have Ty Rogers sitting there at 4.9. They're lower end values, but it may become necessary to use one of them just to be able to have some flexibility with the rest of your lineup. Coleman Hawkins is cheap at 6.5. He's actually projecting the best, but I don't know that I buy that. I don't like this spot for him. I think he actually struggles with UConn's physicality. I think Domask and Shannon will be much clearer options, but I think UConn will obviously prioritize them, at least for trying to contain them. Dane Danger's there at 5.2. Right now, I'm slotting him in about 18 minutes. Maybe he gets a little bit more. He's just a serious load out there, and they're going to need him to muscle that front court of UConn. Mostly will be Klingon, but then we'll see Samson Johnson step in there for 10 to 12 minutes, another sizable guy. But he has height, but he doesn't have girth. If he ends up out there with Dane Danger, that's going to be a pretty big problem, and Danger could definitely have a mismatch in that situation. So mostly GBP looks here on the Illini side, and I'm running that stack of UConn 2-3 players that I don't expect to be super popular. Obviously more ownership than before, but I still think people are sleeping on the defending national champions, which is weird to say, but based off of ownership every slate that UConn's on, that seems to be the case. All right, in the second half of the slate here, Clemson versus Alabama. Bama's a 3-point favorite, total of 164.5. Bama games are always high totals. They play at one of the fastest paces in the country. We know that. I do like Clemson +3. I know some places are already down to 2.5 there, but that just, Randall made a good point on Twitter that people are going to see the Bama win over North Carolina and just assume they're going to crack. And everyone's going to bet the Bama side. But to me, Clemson, how could you even doubt them? PJ Hall had those 2 horrible games in their first 2 rounds, had a better game, in their Sweet 16 matchup against Arizona. He played 32 minutes, 17 points, 8 rebounds, 28 fantasy points, but that's still not the best version of PJ Hall. He's capable of dropping a 50. He's priced at only 6'9". How do we not roster PJ Hall in every lineup this time? Just a fantastic spot for him against that Alabama team. Ian Schiffelin is only 6'7", projecting very well. Another 33 fantasy points game that he had against Arizona. 7 rebounds, 14 points. He shoots threes. Just that versatile Hunter Tyson, that's his role. He's playing this year with Hunter Tyson off to the NBA, and he's playing extremely well next to PJ Hall. I typically don't like to play those two together, but I think there is merit to doing so. As far as the guards go, Joey Girard's a volume guy. You know that. I'm not particularly, enamored with him. I am at the point with Chase Hunter where, yeah, he's 6'6". It's a high price, but man, he is having the tournament of a lifetime. 37 against New Mexico, 35 against Baylor, and then another 36 against Arizona. And he scored 18 real points in each of those tournament games while dropping at least 5 dimes in each as well. He's playing ridiculously well. He saved, obviously, the best time to unleash the best variation of himself. And I think at 6'6", that price, it's enough to make people a little weirded out. Overall, his rates this season, he's not going to project that much over 4X because, he had some pretty porous games for the first couple of months of the season. He had to get acclimated to playing next to Joey Girard. It took him some time. He's figured it out. So if you kind of chop it down into maybe the last 3 weeks of games, you have a much higher projected Chase Hunter based off of how he's been playing. And that's one of those ones where I'm going to have a lot of shares of him. I believe in him after watching him play these last few games. And, people that just directly pull the optos and the projections may end up whiffing on this Hunter play. It is kind of a chase for Chase, though, because we're paying one of the highest prices for him. And obviously, if he bricks, that will be no bueno. But this matchup against Alabama, at least we know the volume's going to be there. He took 16 shots against New Mexico, 10 against Baylor, and then another 15 against Arizona. So volume will be there. His peripherals, they're not as great as Braden Smith, which you just saw him drop a 50, but they're very similar. He could easily have a 15, 7-7 type of stat line. Then you throw in a couple of made threes, you throw in a block, a couple of steals. Suddenly you're looking at a 40 spot at 6'6", and people just don't buy that Chase Hunter is actually good. He really is. He was Posh Play of the Day several times last year, actually, and he paid off significantly. But this year we haven't used him a lot because of Joey Girard, but now he's really figured it out. You can expect Jack Clark to be very heavily owned. He was last slate at 5'4". He did brick. He played 30 minutes still, but just there wasn't a lot of volume there for him. He didn't grab a lot of rebounds. It was more of a defensive game. He was dealing a lot with the Arizona front court, did a lot of things that just don't show up in the box score. But the main important ingredient to look at here is the fact that he's playing over 30 minutes consistently at a forward slot, 5'6", cheap. Definitely use him. The nice thing about Clemson is they provide us all these forward slots, a typically hard to fill position. The first one, UConn and Illinois, we have Caravan, who we have at a forward slot. But other than that, there's not a lot that I want. Clemson's going to be able to give us Hall, Schiffelin, Clark, or we can even look down at a cheaper player like RJ Godfrey at 4-5, who had some early foul trouble in that Arizona game, which is why he played only 11 minutes. Without foul issues, you can expect him to trend closer to 20. And that could negatively impact Jack Clark for sure. So you have to be aware of that as you're building. You don't want to just throw these guys in lineups altogether. If you're doing some Clemson mini stacks, you need to have Chase Hunter, maybe PJ Hall, then you can run Godfrey with him. I wouldn't run Godfrey with Jack Clark. That just seems like a very negative correlation thing to do. Chauncey Wiggins is nearly min price once again. He had 3x in his last game, hit a couple of threes, ended up playing about 11, 12 minutes. He got into the game earlier because of that foul trouble on RJ Godfrey. So he is a definitive in-play value option that you can use. Not really a main team look because I think that, yes, raw points are important on these small slates, but this one is going to be rather high scoring, more so than what we typically see for a two-gamer, and that's just because of the soft pricing. Because of that soft pricing, we're not required to have to dip down here and play a Chauncey Wiggins at 3-2 like we might have had to do today with a guy like Ben Gold, Camden Heide. We saw Braden Huff, like all these guys who just really didn't do a whole lot, but we had no choice but to play them if we wanted to have any kind of, exposure to Dalton Connect, Braden Smith, those type of players. So Wiggins, more of a secondary look, but is at least interesting there, especially if you're running multiple lineups and you want them to, what do the football guys say, right? Let your lineup tell a story. With this game, you want to maybe tell the story with Clemson and build those various, I think PJ Hall is going to continue to foul. That means I need Godfrey here, or I need some Chauncey Wiggins. So building like that. Alabama side, Mark Sears is below 9K. I don't know why. This should cause him to have major ownership. He had 27 against North Carolina. They give it up to Hubert Davis. Like, he made some puzzling decisions not playing Trimble or Elliott Kadu much in the second half and playing Paxson Wojcik. But it almost worked because they shut down Mark Sears. He had like 16 in the first half, only 2 in the second half. I do think Clemson will be capable of harassing him into a lot of bad shots, similar to what maybe we saw against New Mexico when Jalen House was struggling and they just weren't hitting shots. I think Sears could be bothered in that regard. His volume could still carry him to a huge game, but I worry it's going to be one of those games where, he scored 25 real points, but man, his peripherals just weren't there today. He had 1 rebound, 2 assists. That was it. Still not going to make it, even though that 8-8 price is relatively cheap for him. So I'll probably be a little underweight on Sears, which is always dangerous, but I would rather play his counterpart, Aaron Estrada, who has done a very good job matching him nearly stride for stride each game. And he's been consistently dropping 30-plus fantasy points in games that matter, especially the last 4. So I actually prefer Estrada over Sears, and that's more of a leverage spot there for me. However, neither of them are going to be like hardcore main team core plays for me. That might be a mistake, but I'm much heavier on Clemson. I'm much heavier on UConn, and I'll circle back around and see what I can fit from the Bama side. Shout out to Mike Kutry, who said that Grant Nelson, hey, they might have to use him against North Carolina. I said, man, he's going to have to prove it because against P5 front courts, he's not the best. He gets into foul issues. He can't guard. They have to bench him like they did against Grand Canyon. He played 36 minutes. Shout out to Coach Oates, who's one of the proponents of playing guys with 2 fouls. He doesn't give them the quick hook. There's a really good example of why you shouldn't. He left Grant Nelson in. He absolutely went berserk. 12 rebounds and 5 blocks against that North Carolina team. I never would have guessed that kind of production from him. 24 points, playing extremely confident. Price bump to 6'4". I do envision people chasing that because it was such a big score, but this Clemson front court, I feel, will give him some problems. We saw Ingram was doing a lot of hanging out on the perimeter. Armando Bacot was all over the place, but it was just like Grant Nelson was just eeling himself all over the court, blocking shots, grabbing rebounds. It was just the craziest thing to watch. I don't foresee him replicating that type of production. Maybe he still pays off at 6'4", but Clemson just has the bodies, the rebounders, the physical specimens that the Tigers are to really give him some issues. So I question 36 minutes. I question 54 fantasy points. I think we're probably in the mid-20s range for him, which is still fine at 6'4". But temper expectations here a little bit against this Clemson team, who has answered the call 3 straight games now. Nick Pringle has some sort of heel issue. They didn't really talk about it before the game, but he played less than 20 minutes against UNC, which also kind of contributed in a way to Grant Nelson playing more. Now, Pringle was his normal self, got into foul trouble as well, but I guess the heel issue was giving him a lot of pain, and they just couldn't use him. So I don't think he's in any danger of missing this game, but it's something to pay attention to, because if he's limited or he does, in fact, end up missing, Mo Diabate would be the instant candidate to play potentially 20 minutes, priced there at 3.8. Or Jaron Stevenson, who's been trending up again, who's priced at 3.6. He can guard multiple positions. He's kind of an interesting offensive option there too at 3.6. But again, Clemson, their defense plays a style that I don't know this Bama team is going to get a lot of clean looks. And I think it's going to be a volume game for those Bama starters, which means guys like Jaron Stevenson just aren't going to get those shot attempts. So you're going to have to get there on peripherals, which can be somewhat tough to do. If Bama's offense comes out stagnant, I could see a little Sam Walters here, and a lot will depend on Latrell Wrightsell if he's out once again. Walters is priced at 3.4. He played 15 minutes against North Carolina, took 5 shots. He hit one of his threes, had an assist, 5 points. Obviously would have liked to have had more. But when he's out there, he's got some pretty solid rates, and he has a green light to shoot, and he does not mind shooting when the ball comes into his hand. So Walters is another interesting kind of GPP type of value there that you can at least sprinkle into some of your various builds at near mid price. I do think Rylan Griffin will be chalky once again. Now there were I think it was 2 players yesterday that were 75% or higher owned. Rylan Griffin was one, Armando Bacot was the other. Expect Griffin at 5.3, who's jumped a mere $400 to be heavily owned. This is the one Alabama play that I feel inclined to use, not because he's going to be chalk. I'm really not about that. You guys know that. But just overall, with the way he's playing without Wrightsell, he's taking a lot more shots. He's almost worked his way into the 3rd option at sometimes. This last game, he was the 4th option because of Nelson. But you saw he hit 5 triples in that game against North Carolina, took 8, and they really were setting plays for him, getting him the rock, and he was confidently delivering. So I love the way that Griffin's playing. I've always thought he had high upside, and at 5.3, he's just way too cheap still to not give consideration to for a 20-plus fantasy point game. So he's my Bama priority. I like everyone else on the team that I've talked about as more secondary GPP looks, but as far as main build goes, Griffin's probably the guy that's going to make it for me in this game from the Bama side. All right, so quick and easy, 2 games. The core for this one is going to be pretty chalky and obvious. Let's see here. So the top did finish minutes before. It's only 2 games. Top projected player at this moment is, in fact, PJ Hall, and at 30 minutes, have him at nearly 5.7x. The first, let's see, out of the top 10 that I have projected right now, 3 are Clemson, 4 are Connecticut, and 2 are Alabama, just so we're aware. The core I'm going to run with, though, I am going to core PJ Hall. It's been a minute. It's been a while. Even yesterday, like with PJ Hall on the slate, I had him in places, but I wasn't like all in on him like I would have expected to be. Now I'm all in on PJ Hall at 6.9. Cam Spencer at 7K, going to be the posh play again. If people want to give us Cam Spencer at 8%, please, by all means. I love it. I think he's just way too good at that price not to consider. And then the third core play for me would be another cheapie, would be ending up the probably most popular play on the slate, Rylan Griffin, 5.3. We just got done talking about it. A very simple and easy play. Connecticut stacks, Caravan, Spencer, Diarra, Castle. Clemson stacks, Hall, Hunter, Chase Hunter, that is, Ian Schifflin, kind of the group that I'm working on as the primary stacks. Obviously can't fit them all together into a lineup and not have to worry about salary or anything, but that's the group that I'm really trying to work through as my priority place. So very transparent. You know where I stand. We're going to look at Prize Picks now, see what they have. Are you talking about my man Cam Spencer? 14.5. That sounds like a Cam Spencer point prop. Minus 330 though. Like, are you trying to put that with something else? I mean, at 10, yeah. If you're gonna get a Cam Spencer points prop at 9.5, 10.5, like he's gonna hit it. Very rarely does he not score at least 10 points. So yeah, that's just a lot of juice. I'm drinking the juice there, as my friend Johnny would say. All right, let's pull up some prize picks. Let's see what we got. Because we absolutely murdered them yesterday. They're doing the whole goblin play, demon play thing that we've talked about, and they had some Cam Spencer props that were just completely laughable. The goblin play for him is 11.5 points for Cam Spencer. I obviously like the over there. He had all three of them yesterday. He's 15.5 on prize picks, which is a little higher there. I do like him to beat that as well for what it's worth, but definitely hitting the over 11.5. Stephen Castle has a goblin point prop at 7.5. We'll also be hitting that. Those are both just really low numbers. Again, they pay out less, but stack a couple of those together and you're on your way. Let's take a look at fantasy score here. We absolutely murdered the 27.5 fantasy points of Cam Spencer yesterday. Prize Picks has gifted us another very cheap total here, 28.5 fantasy points. Clearly, I'll be taking the over there. Very high on Spencer props. Basically a rerun of yesterday. I'm hitting all of the point props for Spencer, his fantasy total, and his PRA, which his PRA at current moment here on Prize Picks is 23.5. They've been teetering between 21.5 and 23.5. And I've been laying off of PRAs a lot more, but these type of players like Spencer who fill it up in all categories, anytime you can get them under 25-ish, it just is for me, a huge lock button over. So Cam Spencer over 28.5 fantasy points, over 23.5 PRA, and all of his point props that you can get on Prize Picks. I'm all over those as well. Let's see. PJ Hall over 27.5 fantasy points. He's putting up 30. It's been a minute, but he's delivering a big performance. Like, this is going to be the PJ Hall game. I feel confident this is the PJ Hall game that we've been waiting for. He's going to deliver. So over 27.5 fantasy points there for PJ Hall. There was a rebounding number here that I wanted to hit. Let's make sure. PJ Hall's goblin rebound number is 4.5. So we'll go over 4.5 there. And then I was hoping for a Quincy Guerrier PRA. They didn't give us one of those. Let's see. I like Marcus Domask under 14.5 points against this Connecticut team. We saw him, struggle mightily against Iowa State. Like, he made some plays, but he did not look as dominant as he has, over the last, month of the season. Iowa State's defense, physicality-wise, very similar to UConn. They held him to 7 points on 2 of 11 shooting. He still got, 5 assists, 6 rebounds. He was contributing there, but I think there's another game in which his scoring total is, on the lower side. So under 14.5 real points for Marcus Domask. That could come back to bite me. That's not my highest confidence play, but I just don't see him putting up 15 plus against UConn. Maybe I'm respecting UConn too much. Maybe you guys aren't respecting them enough. I don't know. This UConn team just doesn't look to me like they're going to be beat anytime soon. So under 14.5 on Domask, but it's 7.5. I don't want to mess with that because he's probably going to end up getting, 8 on free throws or something. Let's take a peek here at Chase Hunter. I like Chase Hunter's PRA as well, over 23.5. So we can work with those. Let's mosey on over to DK, see what kind of props we're working with here. So Spencer over 15.5 points, minus 110. Just going to keep hitting Spencer. Um, mm, 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 mm. Jack Clark over 7.5 points at -105. It can be tricky sometimes with him, but they're going to need him in this game. I think he gets some putbacks. So over 7.5 for Jack Clark, over 16.5 points for PJ Hall. It is -145. So we might want to throw it with something else. Maybe we pair it up with Cam Spencer. But over 16.5 points for PJ Hall is I think he's going to have that game. I think we're talking about a 20-point game for PJ Hall, and he drops like 40 fantasy points as well. So I'm very, very much in on the PJ Hall props here this time. PRA, mentioned already Cam Spencer over 23.5. Also like Alex Caravan over 19.5 at -115. And then Chase Hunter is 22.5 on DK at -125. So like that over as well. Yeah, I think that will do it. You're looking for. Yep. So you're talking about Spencer. I want to put him on a 3-play parlay. Yeah. As far as like my most, I know you always ask me this, Don, like my most confident like player or prop, it is Cam Spencer. I don't see him failing here. PJ Hall, 16.5, had his points. Like that's a pretty confident play for me as well. But Spencer props, PRA, and his point props are definitely going to be in the tracker, and one that I'm extremely involved with. Let's see. Domask Legacy game. Maybe. I don't know that he scores more than 10 points against UConn, but he definitely has to. I don't think he's going to, though. Now he's trash talking Cam Spencer. That's all good, man. Yes, I know Illinois' offense is incredible, but I mean, I know there's a lot of people that feel the way you do about UConn. Like they're just it's so hard to repeat, and they've got the teams they're playing. This is a death region, and like for being the death region, they're just mowing teams down, like absolutely mowing teams down. The big thing here, don't get too excited that first half. This is my advice. Because Illinois' offense will go on runs, right? And they may start fast, just like they did in the Iowa State game. The main difference here between Iowa State and UConn is that they panicked. UConn and Coach Hurley won't. They won't panic. They'll just make an adjustment. If Shannon drops, 15 in the first half, watch what they do to him in the second half. And I know how good he is. I watch a lot, I watch all those games too. I get it. He's an amazing scoring machine, but you're talking about a UConn team that is not of this planet. They have a very sophisticated system on both sides of the ball. Hurley demands excellence. His players are fantastic. He gets the most out of them. And the scary thing about UConn, look what happened. Donovan Clingan had a bad game. A lot of teams, when your star center has a bad game, you just don't win. You just don't win, right? That wasn't the case with UConn. Why? Because they have Cam Spencer. Cam Spencer has a bad shooting night. Do they lose? Probably not. I mean, obviously they lose games, but not in the tournament. If Spencer has a bad game, Castle's picking up the slack. Tristan Newton's having a damn near a triple-double. Alex Caravan can get hot from long range. There's just Hassan Diarra can end up scoring 20 plus. Like there's just too many options on UConn. Illinois does not have that luxury. They've got Terry Shannon. They've got Marcus Domask. Coleman Hawkins has had games. Luke Goody's hit shots. Ty Rogers has had some performances. But come on, man. Don't tell me you actually think that UConn's not going to win here. I think that will do it. That's a wrap. I don't need to keep you guys here too much longer. So the games start later in the day. There will be the normal projection sheet, the article, show link, everything there. Also working on some more short form content with my man Quan. He's the one that put together all those graphics and for us in the video. I'm just really hyped to do that. So there'll be a lot more players to watch type of content there. And also like as we get into next season in college football, there'll be a lot of that stuff as well. We'll be back tomorrow night, right around 10 p.m. PST after those games end, to talk about the second half of the Elite Eight games. And then we'll be taking a couple days off. We'll cover the NIT Final Four and the championship. We'll go in depth about the Final Four for the big dance and the title game with all of those contests. There will be a lot of guests for the Final Four show. Very excited to show you guys that. Otherwise, we'll get out of here. Best of luck to everyone. Get those green screens, walk those trips to the window, and let's end the day profitable, avoiding any and all shenanigans. But it is the tournament. Sometimes you just never know. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later.